UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
Comfort Moodian භාගයයි කලක් පවතින අලුත් පෙනුමයි.
Just not cricket. The foreign minister explains why revoking the GSP Plus is an insensitive move.
Whatever one's political views, to urge a course of action which will actually lead to starvation, or achieve one's own ends. The people who are criticizing have no problems financially. They are not going to start.
Steadying the ship. The tea board chairman calls for a more balanced dollar exchange rate to suit tea exporters.
I personally feel that you have to have a slightly correct value for the dollar. So obviously then there's a shortage of dollars.
Sorting it out. Crucial talks between the president and nurses' unions end in some concessions. Swept away. Deadly landslides in Brazil claim the lives of over 100 people. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Thursday, the 17th of February 2022.
Nelly මතකෙන් ගිලිහුණු black shiny කෙස් කලඹක රහස sunset black shine සමගින්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanaka. Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tea Board, Jampati Molligoda, says that regaining the lost markets and maintaining status quo is the goal for this year, as it intends to persist with the niche market strategy with Ceylon tea exports. Speaking to Indivara Yamuwatha on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, Molligoda also stressed the need to provide exporters a better exchange rate for the dollar, as the prevailing pegged rate is below what is deserved.
Tea exporters, are they happy with the kind of support that the government extends, or do exporters require more representation? What are the challenges exporters face right now? How conducive is the economic situation, the environment in Sri Lanka for tea when we talk about exports?
This is the key. I fully agree. There has to be a greater representation by the exporters. But having said that, the exporters are represented at the tea board. So we act as an intermediary between the government policies and the private sector. The general tendency, the private sector, they'll always try to come up with their own strategies. We have this 2030 strategy. There are a couple of concerns expressed by exporters, which I also subscribe, and we have made representations to the government. Take, for instance, since you asked this question about the macroeconomic fundamentals. When the external value of the rupee is overvalued in terms of US dollar, as you know, there's a fixed exchange rate policy for the last 5-6 months. There is a valid reason for government to do that, because if the rupee depreciates to a level of 235 and all, what will happen to the debt portion, what will happen to the cost of living, all these things have to be taken. We take care of that. But having said that, if you don't have the right price, the other trading partners, their currencies are also getting depreciated. Take, for instance, Iran. India, of course, the depreciation is less, our depreciation is little higher, but I personally feel that you have to have a slightly correct value for the dollar. So the dollar is little undervalued in rupee terms. So obviously then there's a shortage of dollars. Obviously the exporters tend to then complain and try to delay remitting the money, because under the central bank rules you can keep it for 6 months for obvious reasons, because especially the brand owners, when they sell tea through the shelf, they have to provide credit, so they can't get money quickly. Even if they get money, if the right price is not there, why should they just convert that at 202 rupees when they feel that we deserve 210 rupees or something like that?
Tea revenues have been sustained at an average of $1.3 billion, slight changes from 2011 to 21, but we see the export revenue sustaining at similar revenue amounts. But where do you see tea exports especially ending up at the end of the year? And in terms of markets too, how are we looking at expanding? Are we looking at new markets?
New markets, of course, China is the emerging market. We have lost markets in UK, but the negative side is actually we inherited the system where the Ceylon tea, as I said, is a niche market, where the mass market is for CTC teas. The teas are the exporters are in a better position to source teas and market. So there is this negative side where we have not been able to tap market share. Actually, market share have been coming down because of this, because the people used to get tea in tea bag form, not in packeted form. So that is why we want to avoid this competition and go for this niche marketing strategy. So we expect slight improvements. In rupee terms also that matters, because that will get trickled down right up to the farmer. In turn, then they will make investments through their internally generated funds to improve the quality of the tea and demonstrate sustainability credentials. Look at the regional plantation companies. If they demonstrate more and more sustainability credentials, and then we market it properly through our market communication strategies. We have this search engine optimization strategies for Ceylon tea and all, that is a nation brand visibility. We may continue to get a higher price. So we command a higher price. So now it's a matter of just sustaining this. I won't say that we can do miracles. Our exporters are doing their best to regain the markets. So that is what is needed right at the moment because of the nature of the global beverage market.
Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires responded to criticism of his ministry's answer to calls by former Human Rights Commissioner Ambika Satgunanathan to the EU to remove Sri Lanka's GSP Plus tariff concessions. He explained that such irresponsible calls would result in starvation of the country's most vulnerable sectors. Speaking to representatives of non-governmental organizations, the Foreign Minister said that such insensitive and provocative statements must not be used to further political agendas at the cost of the country's people.
During a discussion on the PTA Amendment Bill held with representatives of non-governmental organizations at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Tuesday, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires responded to concerns raised by civil society groups.
We were very concerned about other things also, such as the Foreign Ministry's own critique of Ambika Satgunanathan for saying what actually even we are saying. We say it differently. We don't say it maybe so aggressively, so harshly, so publicly.
On Ambika Satgunanathan, everybody is entitled to criticize. You referred to the harshness of tone. More than the harshness of tone, the problem was to exhort the European Commission to take away GSP Plus from this country. Now, for a Sri Lankan citizen, whatever one's political views, to urge a course of action which will actually lead to starvation in this country, to achieve one's own ends. The people who are criticizing have no problems financially. They are not going to starve. But the fishing community in this country and those girls who are working in garment factories whose whole lives have been transformed, they take money home, they support their mothers, their sisters. All those girls will be on the road. Take it from me. If GSP Plus goes out, with it will go the livelihoods of the poorest people in this country. The people who are sitting in offices in Colombo and churning out this stuff, they won't be affected one jot or tittle. But the most vulnerable segments of Sri Lankan society will be driven to starvation. And it is very sad to see a Sri Lankan of any hue, politically, socially, advocating that point of view. Then, okay, I will make this comment. I was wondering whether I should say that, but I'm going to say it. Neither Ambika Satgunanathan nor anybody else knew Neelan Tiruchelvam as well as I did. Now, this lady is the chairperson of the Neelan Tiruchelvam Trust. I am telling you that nobody knew his thinking better than I did. Because we were in the University of Peradeniya together as undergraduate. Then I went to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. Neelan went to Harvard as a Fulbright Scholar. Our paths in life crossed again when we both entered Parliament together in 1994. And after that, Neelan and I worked very closely on vital constitutional documents. Right? We were very close collaborators and very close friends. His family will bear witness to that. You spoke of a vision. I know what Neelan's vision was. His vision certainly was not to starve poor people in this country. And Neelan Tiruchelvam, were he alive today, would be appalled that the head of an organization that bears his name would exhort officialdom in Brussels to snatch food and livelihoods out of the mouths of our people. If GSP Plus is removed, who suffers? The people who are least able to bear that burden. That is insensitive and provocative.
In addition, the Foreign Minister also touched on what he explained was a very different relationship that civil society enjoyed with the previous government. The minister cited the Counter-Terrorism Act that the previous government attempted to enact, which he revealed posed a serious threat to media freedom and civil liberties at the time, but garnered little to no response from civil society.
previous government had a completely different relationship with some segments of civil society. Otherwise, how come there was no criticism, no protest, no pressure, no agitation, nothing? They just sailed along. And it is we from the opposition who prevented the enactment of the CTA. If the CTA had been enacted, there would have been no trade union movement in this country. Do you know that the CTA had provisions which gave the minister the power to order that journalists should not go to a particular place and take notes? You know, you're talking of journalists being arrested. But did anybody protest about that? At that time, Honorable Mahinda Rajapaksa was not even leader of the opposition. Mr. Karujayasuriya withheld it from him, although we were by far the largest group in parliament. So the minister could prevent a journalist from writing no. Do you know that there was an amazing provision there that the minister could issue an order preventing a person from travelling anywhere except between his residence and his place of work? Yes, it was there in the CTA. Now, what happens if we enact such a law? When I saw it, I couldn't believe my eyes. The constitution says you can travel anywhere in this country, you can live anywhere in this country, but here the minister says you can travel only from your residence to your place of work. So we created such strong public opinion that that legislation collapsed. So that is how that government behaved. But what was the response of civil society?
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has instructed officials to deliver on specific demands of nurses' unions, including those relating to their uniform allowances and the backdating of Grade 1 promotions during discussions held at the Presidential Secretariat today. In the meantime, the President also inspected the site of the proposed Galle Techno Park that is expected to be completed by mid-2023.
A discussion between President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Minister of Health Kedira Mikwella, Health Minister officials, representatives of the Public Service United Nurses Union and UGC Chairman Professor Sampath Amaratunga was worked off this morning at the Presidential Secretariat. Discussions were held on several areas and some of them included reducing the 36-hour duty period to 30 hours covering 5 days, the proposed 10,000 rupees allowance to nurses and the issuance of the circular with regard to the provision of uniform allowances. Further, the President also instructed the Secretaries of the Ministries of Health and Finance to take steps to provide the uniform allowance and to backdate Grade 2 to 1 promotions. What's more, talks were also held on starting a nursing university as well.
දැන් මේ හෙද විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ආරම්භ කරන එක කරන්න පුළුවන් නේ දැනට කොයි තැනද තියෙන්නේ
ඒක අපි ඉස්සල්ලාම කටයුතු කරා මේ නර්සිං ස්කූල්ස් එකතු කරලා මේක තවත් ජාතික විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක් බවට පත් කරන්න ඒ අනුව හයර් এডুকেෂන් ඇක්ට් එක එමෙන්ඩ් කරන්න අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු කරා
දැන් අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක් කරන්නනේ
ඔව් සර්
ඒ කියන්නේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක් හැටියට උපාධිය දෙන්න හැබැයි ප්‍රතිපාදන කමිෂන් සභාවට යටත් කරන්න අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැහැනේ
ඔව් සර්
එහෙම කළොත් විතරයිනේ Z ස්කෝ එක අනුව ගන්න ඕන
ඔව් අප්‍රේල් මාසෙ වෙද්දී අලුතෙන් ඇක්ට් එක සම්පූර්ණයෙන් හදලා මේ යුනික්නස් එකත් මෙහෙම තියාගෙන මේක විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයක් බවට පත් කරන එක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ඉවර කරලා සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයට අපිට දෙන්න පුළුවන්.
ඒක ඉක්මනට කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒක අනිත් ඒවටත් බලපානවා. හරි. ඉලෑඳුම් දීමනාව වැඩි කරන එක අපි ඒක දෙන්නම් කියලා කිව්වනේ. මේක කරලා දෙන්න.
In the meantime, the launch of the roadmap for the Kittul Development Board was worked off this evening near the Hiare Reservoir in Galle under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Prior to the event, the head of state joined an exhibition that showcased treacle-based products. At the launch of the roadmap, the president handed over certificates to innovators of treacle-based products who successfully completed a training program.
අවුරුදු දහස් ගණනක් පැරණි අපිට ආවේනික මේ වගාව ගැසට් නිවේදනයක් මගින් රටේ වැවිලි භෝගයක් හැටියට අනුමත කොට අමාත්‍යාංශ විෂය ධාරාවට පවරා තිබෙනවා. ඊටත් ඔබ්බෙන් ගිහිල්ලා ඊටම වැදගත්ම කාරණේ හැටියට අපි පසුගිය දිනවල ශ්‍රී ලංකා ප්‍රමිතිය ආයතනය සමග සම්බන්ධ වී කිතුල් සඳහා ශ්‍රී ලංකා ප්‍රමිතිය නිකුත් කරලා තිබෙනවා. මේ හා සම්බන්ධ රෙගුලාසි නිකුත් කිරීමෙන් පසුව කිතුල් නම ව්‍යාජ ලෙස භාවිතා කරමින් වෙනත් සීනි ද්‍රාවණ වෙළඳ පොළෙහි විකිණීම තහනම් කිරීමට අවශ්‍ය නීතිමය ප්‍රතිපාදන අපි සකසන බවත් ඊටම ගෞරවයෙන් මේ අවස්ථාවේදී සිහිපත් කරනවා.
Meanwhile, the head of state also inspected the Galle Technopark that is currently under construction in the area of Valahandua. It is one out of the 5 such parks proposed by the Ministry of Technology with the aim of spurring cultural technological innovation. The 3-acre technopark is expected to be completed by mid-2023. This project in Galle aims to provide 2,000 direct and indirect employment opportunities and is expected to comprise of 5G technology and other new technological facilities.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa called on new graduates to try entrepreneurship as a means to drive the country's post-pandemic recovery. Addressing the graduation ceremony of Oxford College of Business, he added that innovative ideas could help grow the country's startup ecosystem and provide them with a much more sustainable income source.
I recall a famous saying by the great leader Nelson Mandela. He said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. As Sri Lankans, we can be proud of having a very high literacy rate. As we aim for economic recovery and prepare to compete globally, Sri Lanka is in need of entrepreneurs who can drive the post-pandemic economic recovery. Therefore, your innovative ideas should be converted into startups and that expanded into larger business organizations that could greatly significant economic activity, including job opportunities. There are many initiatives that are in place to support startup businesses. Make use of these opportunities to create better future for yourself and provide opportunities for other Sri Lankans. By becoming an entrepreneur, you make use of your education and build a sustainable income source for yourself while contributing to the economic recovery of our country, regardless of which career path you follow. I urge you to give your best and most genuine effort. You must always strive to exceed expectations and never stop learning, because learning is a lifelong process.
Join us on the other side of this short break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the Government Medical Officers Association is set to launch a one-day token strike on Monday, the 21st of February. The token strike is scheduled to be worked off at government hospitals across the island. The move comes a day after 18 health sector trade unions suspended their strike, which continued for 9 straight days, crippling the hospital services in the country. At the time, however, the GMOA voiced their opinion against the strike and urged the government to not give in, saying that the remuneration demands run the risk of spreading to other sectors of the government as well. The GMOA says that their token strike planned for Monday is in protest of the government's non-adherence to the national salaries policy. The police special task force was forced to return fire at a suspect who had kidnapped his 7-year-old son at gunpoint today after a 7-hour search and rescue operation. The police say that the suspect was a known criminal who had taken the child away from carers after threatening them with a T-56 assault weapon earlier in the day. Meanwhile, the CID Illegal Asset Division netted their largest ever seizure of drug-related assets of over 790 million rupees belonging to noted drug racketeer Dematagoda Ruwan.
A suspect involved in the kidnapping of a 7-year-old child was shot dead in Horana by police special task force personnel today. According to police sources, the suspect, who is the father of the child, had in the morning hours kidnapped him from the residence of a relative after threatening the residents with a T-56 assault weapon. Sources say that the suspect had arrived at the residence and fired several shots in the air and forcibly taken the child away in a 3-wheeler. Earlier on the 11th of this month, the suspect had assaulted his wife with a sharp weapon, causing her serious injuries, after which the child was left in the care of a relative. It was in this backdrop that the kidnapping had taken place. After a police complaint was filed, a search operation was launched by the police with the assistance of the Special Task Force. After tracking down the suspect to a 2-story house in the Ballapitiya area, STF personnel were forced to return fire after being fired upon, which led to the suspect's death. The police say that the 24-year-old suspect, identified as Neelika Sandaruwan, alias Neela, was a noted criminal who had been evading the police and several court warrants. The child was handed over to his grandmother after his rescue. In the meantime, the Criminal Investigation Department's Illegal Assets Division has been able to seize over 790 million rupees in illegal assets belonging to a noted underworld figure, Dematagoda Ruwan. This is the single largest seizure of illegal assets so far, which police sources say were funded through the suspect's drug smuggling operations. This included 9 luxury vehicles of an estimated value of 90 million rupees, properties worth around 160 million rupees, and 1.5 kilos of gold valued at 20 million rupees. Further, the CID has also frozen several fixed deposits amounting to 90 million rupees as well. In addition, the CID is also investigating several other tourist hotel properties belonging to the suspect too.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the Board of Investment says that a total of $165 million in investments have been signed by 20 BOI-linked companies to expand their existing operations. The agreements were signed between the companies and BOI Chairman Raja Edirisuriya and Director General Renuka Veerakorn. The investments are into diversified sectors such as apparel manufacturing and accessories, assembling of refrigerators and coolers accessories for commercial purposes, healthcare education training, BPO services, hub operation activities to facilitate on-spot trading, telecommunication infrastructure, tertiary IT education, accessories for the hospital sector and industrial rubber gloves. Commenting on the investment, BOI Chairman Edirisuriya said that the confidence placed in the government's economic policies by investors was overwhelming and was a welcome boost to the country's economic growth. Now, taking a look at the Colombo bourse, Sri Lankan shares ended marginally lower today as declines in industrial stocks offset gains in financial companies. At the closure of trade, the CSE All-Share Price Index was down 0.10% to 12,352.38 points. However, the S&P SL20 Index of more liquid stocks ended marginally up 0.18% to close at 4,224.63. Foreign investors were net sellers in the equity market, offloading shares worth 38.7 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, picking up shares worth 3.79 billion rupees. And with that, here's a more detailed report on today's trading.
So today also we saw market falling into the red zone again, although S&P SL20 index managed to close with a marginal gain of 5 points. With the start of the market, we saw index gaining about 65 points with the announcement of dividends and positive results in some of the banking sector counters. However, but then selling started and the gains were erased as market started to continue the decline, reaching intraday low of 12,262. Again, towards the mid of the day, there was a slight recovery and closed the day at 12,352, although losing about 12 points. So, although banking sector counters mainly contributed to push the index up, some of the retail favorite counters operating in the diversified financial sector, food, beverage and tobacco and capital goods sectors led the today's decline. However, market turnover slightly improved compared to previous day, recording rupees 3.8 billion, although number of trades declined to 34,341.
Meanwhile, in the currency market, the Sri Lankan rupee remained unchanged at 202.99 cents against the US dollar today as well. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee fared against other major currencies during the day. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.